I would like to read a few passages from a book about Hegel and the Hermetic tradition. And Hegel says, um, every individual is a blind link in the chain of absolute necessity along which the world develops. Every individual can raise himself to domination over a great length of this chain only if he realizes the goal of this great necessity and, by virtue of this knowledge, learns to speak the magic words which evoke its shape. The knowledge of how to simultaneously absorb and elevate oneself beyond the total energy of suffering and antithesis that has dominated the world and all forms of its development for thousands of years, this knowledge can be gathered from philosophy alone. And then the author of the book talks about the Hermetic tradition and its relation to Hegel. Everything in the cosmos is internally related, bound up with everything else. Um, Man is the microcosm in which the whole of the macrocosm is reflected. Self-knowledge, therefore, leads necessarily to knowledge of the whole. And the author summarizes the Hermetica, the Hermetic doctrine, in 7 points that I will now read. God requires creation in order to be God. That's why nature, the world, has been created, is because God needs its other nature in order to become itself. God is in some sense completed or has a need fulfilled through man's contemplation of him. The purpose of man, the reason why man exists, is to become aware of God and to come into cognition with God. Um, Man is the tool that God uses in order to know himself. Illumination involves capturing the whole of reality in a complete encyclopedic speech. And I said that you cannot understand anything if you don't understand the relation of this thing to the totality of being. So knowledge in its essence is encyclopedic. And in the French edition of the Encyclopedia of Philosophical Science by Hegel, the commentator says that if you are coherent and logical, to say about anything that it is, if you are consistent with yourself, um, to say that anything is, if you really want to know what it means, the only answer that you can find is by producing Hegel's Encyclopedia of Knowledge. And yeah. Uh, Man can perfect himself through gnosis. He becomes empowered through the possession of the complete speech. As an individual, I think that I have understood this, but the complete speech is that which every thinking being in the world produces unconsciously. And um, the more you study scientists, philosophers, intellectuals, whatever, the more they do it still unconsciously, but they produce speeches which are aiming at the totality. You have history of economics, history of science, history of religion, history of technology, whatever. And this knowledge of the whole of the human and cosmic experience is coming into being unconsciously. The only thing that I think as an individual I have understood is that this process is God coming conscious of himself. And yeah, man can know the aspects or moments of God. God is a process of othering, alienating himself from himself, and from this alienation, recapturing, recollecting all the moments of his being, and that's what makes him complete and perfected. An initial stage of purification in which the initiate is purged of false intellectual standpoints is required before the reception of the true doctrine. As an individual, I am determined, one might say, that in my intellectual development, I have never stopped on a moment for a very long time. I've always been moving, always been changing my thoughts, reconsidering my former thoughts, integrating new thoughts, new points of view. And I've always been moving and searching and collecting and analyzing and thinking and reconsidering and doubting. And this process is a necessary process in God's coming into knowledge of himself, according to the Hermetic tradition. And the universe is an internally related whole, pervaded by cosmic energies. This is what the spiritualists or the New Age, whatever you may call them, or the animists or whatever, they intuitively feel this cosmic unity of all things, but they do not express it cognitively. They do not express it with the necessity of the concept, as Hegel would said. And if you, how should I put it, that this spirituality without rational intelligence leads to rational intelligence, and rational intelligence without spirituality leads to spirituality. That's what Hegel knew. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share today.